Every meat dish starts with 3 cardinal ingredients. They are onions, ginger and garlic. That's an absolutely necessary trio whenever you're approaching meat, because in India we can't allow meat to tenderise by hanging it for long periods of time. Often homes don't have fridges, so what the onion, ginger and garlic does is that it actually helps tenderise the meat and preserve the meat. So very often meat curries are tastier on day 2 or 3 because the flavours and the acids from the onion, gingers and garlic have gone into the meat, tenderised it and suddenly infused it with all of their own flavours. So, simple start, as many onions as you can be bothered chopping, throw them in, as much garlic, chop it roughly, as small as you like, as small as you can. Give it a quick stir in some oil. And the last thing to go in is the ginger. Now I have a fantastic shortcut for ginger. One of the reasons I wouldn't cook meat for a long time is because of the faff of having to peel and grind ginger. I'm terribly lazy. But I found these amazing frozen ginger cubes. You can get them in supermarkets. I'm not talking about the stuff in jars, because often that's preserved in vinegar and it can be quite sour. This is just pure ground ginger that's been quickly frozen. I think it works brilliantly. I'm putting it in everything now. So, as soon as your onions have turned, we say, pinkish brown, we're ready to go in with our spices. So that's going to take a few minutes. That's possibly the longest part of this preparation for this dish. Now, just while we're waiting for the onions to begin to turn brown, I'm going to tell you about the spice that we're going to be using today. Remember, I taught you about the trinity of spices, 3 spices going into curries, and a head note spice, which is the main flavouring for any particular dish. Our head note today is going to be garam masala, an amazing spice. It's a collection of dry, woody, perfumed spices that have been ground together. And you feel a bit like a conductor of an orchestra when you're using this, because what you do is as soon as your onions are brown, you add a good 2 to 3 teaspoons of garam masala. That's going to form the spice base of your curry. Now, within garam masala, if I wanted to, I could elevate any of those particular flavourings. It's got cinnamon in it. If I wanted a sort of woody, sweet curry, I put a bit of extra cinnamon powder, call that flavour to the front of the mouth. If I was making something that was going to be a little bit more floral, perhaps with a yoghurt base, I might get some more ground coriander in there, which is another seed within garam masala. So garam masala contains a number of spices and you can elevate whichever ones you like or none. You should be able to make a perfectly delicious chicken curry with just the ground garam masala powder. So the garam masala goes in because, again, the oil is coating that spice and helping it to release the aromatic oils within them. And as soon as they have sweated down a little, we add our other 2 of the trinity, turmeric, which is going to give this curry a lovely golden finish, and a little bit of chili powder, which gives curry not only a touch of heat. I don't like hot curries. It's giving this curry a nutty meatiness. What is wonderful about your masala is, the truth is, at this stage you could take that, put it in a jar and either freeze it or keep it in your fridge for months. At this stage, this chicken curry or meat curry could go one of 2 ways, and I'm going to cook 2 meat curries for you today to show you how you can get from the kind of korma looking dish to the kind of vindaloo, dough piazza, rogan josh kind of dish. So we're at the masala stage. This is our starting point. The spices are in, the basic onions, ginger and garlic are in. We're ready to go in with our chicken. So I'm going to put it all in, and then I'm going to divide this lot into 2. I'm going to make 1 creamy curry and show you how easily that's done, and 1 rich deep brown curry and show you what you need to do to get there. So, the first thing we do is we fry our meat in the masala, just to the point that the meat is sealed and it's begun to absorb some of those spices. But the main cooking stage of the curry will come when it's in its sauce and it's left to bubble away for as long as you can tolerate, really. That is when all the flavours will really infuse into the meat and infuse back out. And that's why meat curries taste better on day 2 or 3, because that has taken place over days and days then. It's real alchemy. There's an awful lot that goes on in the pan without you even doing anything. And once you know how to treat your spices and you understand the chemistry of what you're doing, it really does release you into being really quite brave and artistic with your curries. So I'm just going to wait for this chicken to seal. And then we're going to go in 2 different directions. I'll set 2 pans up for you and get them going as quickly as possible. Okay, our chicken is beginning to turn brown. So I'm going to divide this pan into half. We'll cook half later. Put half into this pan. Let's turn one creamy and let's turn one brown and tomatoey and rich. Let's go creamy first. Very simple to create a cream-based curry. Depends what you've got in the house. You could do it with creme fraiche, you could do it with yogurt, you could do it with cream. If you're desperate, you could do it with a bit of milk and thicken it with perhaps coconut powder or ground almonds. I've got some creme fraiche here. It's a kind of perfect blend. Yogurt can make it a bit tart. Creme fraiche gives it that little bit of a sour note, but it's still quite a gentle addition. So we just throw a bit of creme fraiche in, just enough to cover the meat because you're going to pad this sauce out with water. I don't want a heavy, cloying, artery-filling sauce. I want it light but rich. So we're covering the meat with the creme fraiche. It's calming that pan down quite nicely. Now, as soon as that's bubbled through, we can add a bit of water to bolster that up. Now, when I think of a kind of korma, creamy curry, I'm thinking sweet. So we're at the point now where we are considering our armoury. We're thinking about the things that our tongue is wanting from this dish. We've put our 3 spices in. The spices were garam masala, turmeric and chili powder. That's it. It's so simple. Now we're at the point where we have to think about flavours. So our chicken is on its way to being done. We've got that kind of creamy korma looking thing going on. I could keep this quite light. I could avoid putting any other heavy ingredients in. But I'm going to put in some ground almonds. It gives it a body and it's just a little bit more hedonistic. If I had guests coming over, this is the kind of thing I'd do. If I was sitting on my own with a fork, I wouldn't bother because of the calories. But I'm going to put a bit of ground almond in because I've got it in the cupboard. Now, salt. We need a little bit of salt in there. Depends, that's entirely down to your taste. I've thrown a little bit in. Now, again, when I'm thinking about a creamy dish, I like it to be quite sweet. Frankly, if I had bananas, I'd be chopping them and throwing them in. You could put tinned lychees in, you could put whatever fruit in this you want. You can go mad. Raisins, dates, half-ripe plums, there is no limit because that's how it is in India. It depends what's in season, it depends what we've got from the market. That's what we would put into our curries. Rather than have them rot on the sides, they're better off in a chicken korma. So the sugar's in. I'm very happy with the amount of sugar I put in there. Now, tomatoes, we won't use tomatoes in a cream-based curry. The tomatoes are going to go into that dark brown dish that I'm going to create later. So I'll leave those out. And remember that within our armoury in an Indian kitchen, we have watered down mustard paste. Now, we don't need mustard in meat dishes because mustard is doing the same thing as onions, ginger and garlic. Onions, ginger and garlic, magical trio of ingredients, preserve and they tenderise, but they also add that slight pungency. So our mustard is redundant when it comes to meat cooking. Right, so I've put in that just about all I would like to. I'm going to leave that to bubble away while I talk you through our other curry dish. Right, we're going to turn this into the kind of red range of curries when I'm thinking about takeaway curries. Your dough piazzas, rogan joshas. Remember, you could add to this any kind of vegetable that you've got that you want to use up in your kitchen. I've got some old courgettes, for instance, so those would be lovely chopped in and popped into the curry. At this stage, instead of going the creme fraiche yogurt route, we go the tomato route. So, be liberal with your tomatoes because, again, these aren't going to form a raw kind of tomato-based dish. They are going to caramelise and they are going to be utterly tamed by those spices. What's going to happen is that spiced oil at the bottom of the pan will percolate through those tomatoes, turning them from this frank redness into a curry-looking brownness. So you can watch this process. This is quite crucial because if I was to serve this curry very shortly after I put tomatoes in, all you would taste is this watery tomato-ness. That's not what we want. We want those tomatoes to very much disappear into the background, but give their best to this curry. And in giving their best, they're giving brownness, a little bit of tanginess, a little bit of sweetness, and a beautiful rich colour. The chicken's nearly done now, and you can see that at the sides there is a trail of red oil. That means that the tomato has flavoured the oil, and the oil has tamed those tomatoes. So the oil has come through the tomatoes, as we say in India. We're now ready to look at our armoury. Let's think about what flavours we want. Let's think about where we want this curry to go. A little bit of salt, just as a nice counterpoint to those sweet tomatoes. Now, because I put so much tomato in this dish, it's going to naturally be quite sweet because of the tomato sugar, so I'm not going to put any sugar in. I don't need the mustard, because the mustard would simply be emulating what the ginger, garlic and onions is doing, so we don't need anything else from there. I'm going to think about adding some vegetables to this now. I've got a green pepper. Let's turn it into a bit of a jalfrezi today. Very simple. They take seconds to cook. Just chop them into the kind of bite-sized pieces that you would want. Throw them in. They're going to be done in seconds. You could go mad and put a bit of red pepper in. Make it a bit more visually stimulating. Let's try that. Now, of course, you could put courgette, you could put broccoli in here. Nothing is going to go amiss. There are no rules. Every Indian cook will cook their curries a little bit differently, and this is where you can be the artist. I want to get you to a place where you can tame these ingredients and be utterly curry confident. You shouldn't be fazed by thinking what ingredients go with which spice. You cannot go wrong if you use these basic formulas. The 3 spices, which are the turmeric, the chili and the garam masala, your armoury, which is the salt, the sweet, the sour, the pungent. Now, we let that boil through until the chicken's done. When the chicken is done, this curry is done. This jalfrezi's had about 15 minutes now. Small pieces of chicken breast. I can see that they're perfectly cooked through. They're tender. I'm calling that dish done. So, we'll just pop that over there. Let's pour that out and let's think about how we're going to garnish that. I always like to finish my curries with a little bit, if I can, of fresh coriander. It doesn't matter if you don't have any in. Don't let that put you off cooking it. We always add coriander. We always add coriander at the end because it's not heat tolerant. It's unstable in heat, its flavours disappear. But what coriander does is it gives a lovely fresh greenness to the dish. It's a lovely finishing flavour. And there we have our jalfrezi. Now let's see how our chicken korma's doing. That's been bubbling away. And it's got that reassuring korma Kashmiri yellow to it. Let's give it a final blast. And again, I like to add a bit of chopped fresh coriander to that, simply because it gives it a lovely colour. It gives it a visual texture, a bit of interest. So grab a few leaves of that. That's ready to transfer to a bowl. It's ready to eat. There we go. Now, depending on what you will have added to that, you could have added vegetables, you could have added lots of different kinds of fruit, or 1 or 2 accent fruits. But it's certainly going to be as tantalising in the mouth as that is on the eye. And that's 2 chicken dishes, essentially 3 spices, but just being confident with knowing what you can add to turn a chicken dish one way or the other.